All right, we're all good, right? I see our sign.
Yes, we are live.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope this year has more hope and recovery. Tonight, we have a joint committee, and we're going to start with a presentation from James Johnson, who's going to talk about the Narrows Botanical Gardens. They're going to give a proposal to request funding to install a native plant garden. So without further ado, please take it away.
You'd like me to take it away?
Yeah, so James, I just want to say that both members of our Traffic and Transportation Committee and our Environmental Committee are here, as well as Leroy Branch from Commissioner Keith Bray's office at the Department of Transportation.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so my name is Jimmy Johnson, and I am a landscape designer by trade, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Narrows Botanical. The Narrows Botanical is about 25 years old, almost 26 years old, and we have an area about a quarter of a mile of strip between the Narrows Botanical. And does everyone have the screen up in front of us?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would really like to expand green space onto the Belt Parkway green space along the edge there. Just a quick setup here about where we're at with the area. And hold on one second, let me get my bearings here. Okay. So here's a little history of the Narrows Botanical. This, guys, is what Shore Road looked like in the 1820s. It was mostly water. And as you can see here, there was probably some marsh grasses and things along the edge. But this slope here is on the top of this slope was Shore Road, the road. That all of this area was filled in as the years went on. This is what Shore Road looked like in the 1820s. There was no Belt Parkway, there was no Narrows Botanical, there was no parkland. It was a slope down to beachy, rocky areas and probably saltwater marshes and docks. By the 30s, they dug out the 4th Avenue train station, and the soil that they took out of there, they filled in all of Shore Road on this edge here. This is Bay Ridge here. This circle here was an island that they start. This is one of the platforms for the Verrazano Bridge, and here's where this is where the Narrows Botanical is about. Roughly estimating where it is at. And this was it in the 30s, like I said. And we went from this to this. Here we are in 2021. What a wonderful word that is, right? 2021. I love saying that. So this is the Belt Parkway. And to the right, of course, is the Narrows, the bicycle path. And here's the Belt. And to the left is greenery, mostly overgrown plants, a lot of invasives and stuff, not really things that we've really planted there. They just kind of happened. So this is an aerial view of the area. This is the Narrows Botanical Garden here, Shore Road. Here is the Belt Parkway, the bicycle path. This green strip, can everyone see that green strip along here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. That is the strip of green space that's between us and the Belt Parkway. This area here is about a quarter of a mile long, let's say, and probably an acre or two if we put it all together. But it's maybe 20 or 30 feet wide, that varies. And like I said, about a quarter of a mile. So this strip here is where we would love to start with greening the area here on the Belt Parkway. The plant that's there right now is called Mugwort. It is a weed from Europe. It's a huge cause of hay fever in season. It's an invasive plant displacing native plants. It has no aesthetic qualities and no value for wildlife. And there's a high cost in mowing it down and trying to keep it maintained. It's it's just sucking money up for absolutely no reason at all. It's useless. It's as beneficial for us environmentally as having cement there. It does nothing for the environment or no native plants, native birds or insects. To remove that, we would, the first one here is, this is what the mugwort looks like. We would remove it down to the soil, and then we would put in, we would replace it with native plants. You know, this would cut also maintenance probably in half, because the native plants would require a lot less mowing or maintaining them in any way. That's what we've been researching. So with that area, when we get to the point where we're replacing it, we would put in things like this. We would put in native grasses. These aesthetically would be beautiful. They'd be salt tolerant, wind tolerant, and also, you know, we're also geared into flooding and what would happen with flooding. And we would make sure that we use grasses that would be able to tolerate some flooding from the Narrows if that happens again, like it did with the hurricane that we had. So this would be part of the plantings on the on the Belt Parkway side, and we would mix that with meadow flowers. And these would be all kinds of flowers that were pollinators for our native insects, aesthetically beautiful as you drive by, an absolute wow factor than what it is right now. So these are the guys that would really benefit from it. These are our native birds. These are native birds of New York State. These are all different beautiful birds. Most of them, you've seen some of them in your area, but if we increase native plantings, native grasses, habitat, these guys would come back, which would be exciting. My dream, of course, would be to have bluebirds back here, and let's hope that that would happen. That's probably one of my favorite birds that there is. A little background with this stuff is, this is another interesting story. So this is called a peregrine falcon. We rescued this. A guy found this bird in Bed-Stuy. He put it in his UPS truck, and I have an animal rehab license, and he drove it down to me. Peregrine falcons are an incredible, beautiful bird. I think it's the fastest animal in the world. And we have 28 breeding pairs in New York City. That is the most amount of breeding pairs in the world. Peregrine falcons need a couple of square miles for each pair. But in New York, in an urban environment like that, they have found enough food that they don't mind cohabitating with other birds. I mention that because this is the type of stuff that having an urban environment and making it friendly with native plants and grasses, you know, habitat can come back for our native wildlife. You know, and like I said, 28 pairs, the most in the world. We rescued this guy, and and it was found in Bed-Stuy. So the parents made a nest in Bed-Stuy. So they rehabbed him and brought him back to the parents so that they could teach him how to live in Bed-Stuy. Pretty cool. So here's the native birds, and this is the benefits they'd have with grasses. They would be able to nest in them, feeding, and also use a lot of the grasses and things for nests and for food. Here's some of the pollinators that we would attract if we had the native wildflowers and the grasses in that area that would fill the area. So this would be another really, really beneficial thing to increase these populations in the area. Having that kind of area with native plant grasses and flowers would be extremely beneficial for these guys. Now, does anyone remember the 1970s and driving upstate when you hit so many insects that you had to put the windshield wipers on?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
in Staten Island, that used to happen.
Yep, exactly. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. That's not a good thing. Our insect populations have crashed. 97% of insects mean nothing or don't do anything to us. They're very, very beneficial to the environment, but they have no negative aspects for humans. And these guys crashing hit many, many other aspects of that. So I just thought this picture was perfect of like the 70s and early 80s, upstate New York, when you had to put the windshield wiper on. These are some of the beneficial insects that would also be attracted to the area, native insects in the area. Now, why do we need native insects? Because native birds only feed their young insects. They don't feed their young seeds. So if we don't have native insects, we're not going to have any native birds because they have no food for their young. So they're not going to set up nests. But if we had the grasses and the wildflowers, the insects would come, those populations would rise, and then as the birds migrate, they would hit this area, and we would have more of these birds in the area because of the food that they have. As you know, we have robins, but you know robins can pull worms out of the grass. We've all seen them do that. Well, they're the only native ones that can access insects that early in the season. So birds need insects to feed their young. If there are no insects, we're not going to have native birds. They're not going to live here. So this is also the Belt Parkway right along Bay Ridge is a natural migration for birds and for many, many insects. So that would this stopover, we're hoping that some of them, instead of going upstate, would make their homes here in Narrows Botanical or right along the Belt Parkway in that grass area. This is called milkweed. This is a plant that used to be all over the place, and through mowing and things, with maintenance on highways, they've kind of eradicated this. If any of you are aware, monarch butterflies, their populations have crashed. And one of the reasons is because this plant is their host plant. They take the nectar from it, they lay their eggs on it, and their caterpillars literally feed off them. So if you don't have these plants, you're not going to have monarch butterflies. And we can increase, and we can have thousands of these plants in this area if we do it that way. So we can make this change, and we could take an area like this. Just another picture of the Belt Parkway over there, and we can convert that into driving by, and you'd see something like this, you know. And this is one of our goals, to have this kind of game changer as you drive by. So you know, you drive by, and to the right would be water, and then to the left would be beautiful plantings of native grasses and wildflowers instead of the mugwort. So again, here's the Belt Parkway, here's the Narrows Botanical, here's that strip of land, the yellow line. You all can see that right along there. So yeah. We would take that, and we would take, this is what the mugwort looks like now on the Belt Parkway. All right, so I took this picture just the other day. That's what it looks like. It's 6 feet tall. So even if you pulled over, you couldn't even walk in there, it's so tall. And aesthetically, that's what it looks like. So we would love to take this area, this 1/4 mile, do all grasses and wildflowers all through here, right? This strip of land between the Belt and the highway, the Narrows Botanical. And then when you drive by, you'd see this. So this is our goal of what we could create along there. And that's what we're hoping to fund and create. Now, much of New York State has all kinds of laws for pollinating plants, laws for native plants. So this is not a new concept. This is not something that I'm kind of stretching, coming into something really difficult. There are laws in the United States and in New York State to do just this kind of planting. So it's out there. The science is there for it, and how to do it and what plants. I would love for Bay Ridge, our community board, to start this off so that we create a chain reaction, and all of our highways, especially the Belt, we eliminate the waste of money with all the maintenance of mowing and trimming and pruning, and creating these meadow areas that save an enormous amount of money, 50% on maintenance, and create these wild spaces for all of the benefits that I just told. Aside from the aesthetics. Any questions?
Well, Josephine, you're muted, and also Anne has her hand raised, if that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so what I wanted to do was it would help me, maybe Jimmy, you can unshare your screen, and then we could take some questions and have a conversation first from committee members in attendance.
Okay, let me see how to unshare. Stop sharing, okay.
Okay, so Anne Falutico has a question, right, Jana?
Hi, Anna. My question for James is, it's a devil's advocate question, okay? Because all these things that you spoke about, birds in particular, are very near and dear to my heart. But the devil's advocate question is this: to present it as a cost saving with the mowing, where does the mowing equipment enter that zone behind the guardrail? Because if they're mowing from 69th Street and they're mowing up the path, how do they get out of there?
Well,
What are the logistics
here's
of
what's happening.
saving the mowing money?
They're not, you're thinking that they put a mower in there. They don't put a mower in there, they weed whack it. They walk through there with weed whackers. So it wouldn't be, that guardrail is there. Remember that mugwort that's there right now, that's 6 feet, those dead branches that are 6 feet tall, they have to be mowed down. So they will go in there with weed whackers to mow that down. So they do not come in with a mower. They would do this with a weed whacker. And the amount of maintenance for the mugwort would be slashed almost in half, because remember, after about 2 or 3 seasons, those native plants maintain themselves with minimum maintenance.
Okay, so they would just bypass that strip, the color.
Remember, the strip is there already, the iron bar.
No, but the weed whacking, the weed whacker
Yeah.
would bypass that strip and continue on, which leads me to the next question. Do you envision in the ideal that the whole strip of Bay Ridge, let's say from 69th to the Verrazano, becomes native even beyond the botanical
Absolutely.
garden?
That would be my dream. And in New York State, this is very popular, and in Connecticut and Jersey, and people are winning awards. And so this is a very popular movement that's happening. So like I said, why it's not happening here in New York City, I have no idea, but it should be happening. And I would love for Bay Ridge to be the wow factor, that, wow, if you drove by and saw how beautiful it is, we can also do signage in there and, saying what's going on. So never mind adopt a highway that someone cleaned an area. We could have a sign talking about, replacing it with natives.
Thank you.
Jana, let's see, you have Richard Day has his hands up. Richard?
Hi, thanks, Josephine. So I'll just say that I used to do this sort of work in my past life, in the woods instead of along highways, but just gonna say that everything that Jimmy has said has been pretty much spot on. Just a few questions, and they're kind of straightforward. Just wondering, you're not going to put anything woody in there, right? It's all just going to be grasses.
Yeah.
And okay. Okay, great. That's one thing. And then the next thing is meadows, like you're aiming for, tend to not stay meadows. And not milkweed. Mugwort doesn't tend to go away that easily. So I am just wondering, like, if you have your maintenance planned out for that, you're going to be fighting the mugwort for the first few years, probably, until everything gets established.
Yeah, this is
and
not.
Then,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and then once that's the case, you're probably looking at some woody guys moving into there, some trees and things like that. So I'm just wondering, if you've given that any thought, or what that looks like.
Sure, that would be yearly maintenance, and if this project goes through, we would have to have a 2-year pretty intensive maintenance on this area to make sure that we get I want a war on mugwort. Like I said, what it does with hay fever and stuff like that. And that plant is so invasive. And remember, all of that area flowers, and millions of those seeds go all into Bay Ridge and weed out places in Bay Ridge. So if we eliminate all of Shore Road's mugwort along the highway, we're gonna be in a very, very good place, and for a lot of reasons. So yeah, that would be maintenance, with making sure that woodies don't grow in there. Woodies means trees and shrubs, seedlings. But that would be a lot less. That would be an annual kind of go through for the woodland, the woody plants. And so that's how that would be maintained. But if we're doing this, the money would have to go into a 2-year maintenance plan. It's not plant it and leave it alone. It's planted and an intensive weeding and maintenance for 2 years till it starts establishing itself.
Great. And sorry, just one last thing. Would it be possible to get your plant palette for that just shared with us? I'm just curious.
You know what? I just started the preliminaries on this, and there are so many plant palettes that we could do. You know what I mean? And as we go further, we would come up with that, which would be really exciting and wonderful. So yeah, that would be, there's just so much richness to that, you know, on what we could use.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we have other board members, Steve, Dean, and Doris.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are there any safety issues involved with people watching or working that close to the highway? I mean, you're really right on the edge of there.
And no more maintenance issues. First of all, they have you saw the white. If you notice in that picture, they had the white. There's all these white lines for parking. You know what I mean in that area. So that air, and also the other thing I forgot to mention this: with the amount of maintenance that needs, they also have to shut the highway to a certain degree. So they wouldn't have to do that as often with cleaning at the area. But there's a wide space of white lines, almost a full car lane. So as with any highway planting, they would have to take the specifications to protect you in that area. You know what I mean?
Okay, Dean, Doris, and then Judy Grimaldi.
Jimmy, are you proposing that Narrows Botanical do the maintenance, or that the city do the maintenance in that area?
If we get the right grant, we have a professional team that's going to do the maintenance, and the DOT hopefully would work out a permit for these people to do, like you'd have a permit for the people that do Adopt a Highway to clean it. Because when this project is done, we need a team in there of professionals maintaining and doing that, who really know what they're doing. You know what I mean? But we can't take that on. Linda and Richie would kill me. You know what I mean? I definitely want to be a consultant on this big time, you know, and that's part of my trajectory with this. But as far as maintenance go, we hire a team that does it and does it the right way, because everything with this is maintenance afterwards. Anyone could anyone could remove all the plants and plant anything you want. Everything is the maintenance afterwards. That's where you
My concern would be that if DOT does it, they're going to go in there with weed whackers and weed whack everything, because that's what they do.
No. That's not the case. You know, that would be like, this would almost be like an Adopt a Highway situation.
Yep,
whereas, you know, Severian cleans this certain area. You know what I mean? It would be the same thing, but we would be adopting it and we would be creating this space.
Thank you.
Doris, and then Judy.
Hi, Jimmy. Great to see you. It's a
Hey,
great plan.
Doris, where are you?
My concern, I'm over here. My concern is salt. Because
What we would use would be salt tolerant. There's many natives that grow near rivers and, you know, saltwater areas like that. So I would never use any plants in there that would be affected by salt spray.
I'm not concerned about salt spray. I'm concerned about the over salting of our highways and the impact that salt on the highways would have so close to this garden.
Well, remember that the Mugwort does just fine with the salting over there. So
Okay.
I'm going to find natives that do just as well as that plant that's there now.
Okay. Good plan.
Judy.
Hi, I just wanted to say hello to
Hi,
Jimmy.
Judy.
And glad to hear about this project. Doris and I, for a short period, when we were much younger and stronger, did
Dumber.
a very small patch near the 79th Street overpass, and we used a lot of native grasses. Probably you're the one who told us what to use, and it grew every year. It came back. But I will tell you, I want to echo your statement about maintenance. Even though the plants grew, the garbage grew right along with it.
Yeah.
And I think I finally was sent to packing when, as I was weeding and trying to maintain the property, a rat ran right over me. So there is a need for maintenance, and that cannot be overlooked. To build something and create something lovely, and
That has to be built into the price.
Yes,
150%. It would be ludicrous. It would be so foolish to you know, to do this oohs and ahs and all this stuff and then leave it.
yes.
It has to be, you're right, it's an ongoing thing. But the payback on so many levels, you know, and especially, you know, our gardens, these areas, these green spaces for us living in Bay Ridge we should treat them as other cultures treat gardens as a relative. This is a relative that we care about. You know what I mean? And not relative, a relative like a family member. The garden, the green spaces of Shore Road should be treated as a relative and that kind of care and concern. And if we can put the funding into something like that and the know-how, we can make that kind of difference. And then when you come down the highway and this becomes a wow factor, and maybe we have signage and this keeps continuing, and then we have all of these spaces with huge fields of that plant, the milkweed that I showed you, and then we start seeing these butterflies and things coming back. That's the big thing. The reason I mentioned the falcons, look what they've been able to do in an urban environment. You know what I mean? We can bring things back to an urban environment. We don't have to make it a forest again, but we can bring things back. And you know, the garden has been so popular this year because of COVID. You know what I mean? Because people are going into green spaces, and green spaces, even if it's beautiful flowers, there's a pleasantry to that everybody responds to, and it's needed. And along the highway along there, it would be so beautiful instead of that neglected crap that's there. Any other questions?
Richard, you have your hand up again? Richard Day? I don't know if that was up from before.
Nope, put it up again. Sorry, I was muted. I just had a quick question. What's preventing you from doing this like right now? Is it just that it's DOT owned, or do you just not have the funding for it?
DOT would have to permit it.
Okay.
That would be number one. And then the funding for it would be number two. Who's going to do this? I can create a team. You know what I mean? If we got the funding, I could have a landscaping company come in and start surveying and creating this. That would be great. So nothing's preventing it. If it's DOT land. You know what I mean? So they have to green light this. Correct, Josephine?
Correct.
And that's the most important thing. And so we don't really want DOT to do anything except permit us to use the area, I think. I don't think that they're, but like I said, the laws in New York State, I started researching this stuff. You wouldn't believe all this positive, all these laws and things and all this stuff pushing for natives. So we're just behind over here, which is ridiculous. We're not, we're just behind. Connecticut, New Jersey, they are doing this all over the place. Remember, we're talking about thousands of acres of mowed grass, you know what I mean, that is as environmentally friendly as cement.
Right. So, I mean, for the board members, Jimmy Johnson had sent the board a letter last year during our October budget capital and expense priorities, pitching this project as a capital priority. And we supported it at the time, sent it over. And, the city is in fiscal straits. And so, practically everything on our capital list is not recommended for funding. But Jimmy and I did have a follow-up conversation, and I know that there's plenty of, grants out there and smaller capital dollars, but really, the goal tonight was to invite the Department of Transportation to present an actual formal visual proposal to both the committee members and to DOT, and then to follow it along to see what exactly would need to be taken. So hopefully, Leroy, I know you're on this call. If you could take this back, we will send it to you, both the Jimmy Johnson's PowerPoint and his written request, and perhaps we could get it to the right people at DOT who work in arterial maintenance that make these decisions to see what would exactly be involved and how feasible. Other municipalities are doing this. Jimmy showed me some slides about, New Jersey and other nearby states.
Upstate New York, big time.
I'd love to see if there are any analyses of what actual savings are in terms of arterial maintenance of areas near highways with native plantings. So this is kind of the first step in that process in a very formal way. And Jimmy, I think you did a great presentation. I know you've wanted to do this for some time.
Thank you.
So I guess Leroy, if you wanted to comment real quick, and then we can move on to the next agenda item, because I know that there are folks
Right,
here.
for
from Next
sure,
Slide.
for sure. I think it's, well, personally, right now, I'm going to speak personally. I think it's a great idea. I think anyone who would like to see something different as they drive along the Belt Parkway, instead of that, I don't know what you call it, but it's horrible.
Yeah.
So to be able to look at something that's aesthetically pleasing, to be able to do something that will help the environment is great. And what makes it even better if the city doesn't have to pay for it. So,
Yeah.
so
I think that was a tail wagger.
right. And the fact that you said that it would cut down on the maintenance and all of that is a great concept. So if you just send it to me, I will definitely get it into the hands of the right people at DOT to push it forward, to see what needs to happen to make this go forward. And that's a no-brainer for me, but I have to see what the people who are the powers that be feel about it. So just send it to me and then I'll go from there. And if we have any questions, make sure that Jimmy's contact information is with it. If they have any direct questions, they can contact you directly.
Okay, great. Also, Ann Politico has another question.
Yeah. Jana,
Yeah.
should the committee have a motion of support?
I was actually going to ask Josephine, I have it on my paper. We do, right? We have to support the.
Yeah, so what we did at yesterday's board meeting was we reaffirmed overall our capital and expense priorities. But I think now that we've had this presentation, it would be nice to have an affirmation of the proposal if the committee would like to do that at this point.
Okay. And then there was also Carmen that I saw she had her hand up at one point. She wants to ask before I start.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Carmen. Carmen, do you have a question?
She's muted. So if she's taught, yeah. Carmen, if you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to ask him, I spent a lot of summers in Vermont. So I know when you see weeds and plants above ground, I just wanted to know how far down do these, what do they call, mudworts? How deep do they grow?
Actually, mugwort is actually pretty shallow.
Oh, good.
So it's only about this deep. And what's great about native grasses is that they can grow 3 to 5 feet deep, which creates an excellent drainage area for the area. Bay Ridge, the Shore Road and Narrows Botanical Area especially is mostly built in a very loomy, sandy soil. So we never have any flooding in that area. The water goes straight down. But the plant that's in there now is shallow rooted like this. So in that respect, it will be easy to remove. It's a tenacious, ugly, invasive plant. We really have to work on getting it out of there. But no, it's not very deeply rooted though.
Oh, that's good to hear, because then it's easy to get rid of them.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. With that being said, okay, I'm going to say it. This is the first time that we actually vote on anything while I'm chair. If there's a mistake, you let me know. So I'm putting out the proposal, all in favor, right? In supporting the request for funding to install a native plant garden along the Belt Parkway side of Narrows Botanical Gardens.
Beautiful.
Okay.
In favor.
In
favor.
And all of our joint members from both committees can vote on this, correct?
Yes,
Right.
correct.
Cat can't vote.
So
Okay.
traffic and transportation, you too.
Yes.
In
Okay.
favor.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay,
and
any-
okay, we're good.
Yeah,
Good.
anyone opposed?
Opposed.
No?
Then recusal.
Just to be clear, sorry,
Yeah.
there's no assessment that's gonna be, we're not gonna be assessed for this, will we?
No, this is for board committee members only. No, no, you're not going to be assessed. No, I'm sorry, Landon. There's no fee to homeowners on this. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any recusals? Okay. So
Okay, motion carries.
Cool. Okay. So now we start with our second half.
I guess we could turn it over to, so the second half is the Traffic and Transportation Committee alone. Environmental Committee members are welcome to stay. And so I guess we'll turn it over to you, Jane, for your second topic.
Okay. All right. Well, it's nice to be part of Team J&J tonight. And so thank you, Jana, for your work this evening and for hosting the first half of our meeting. And we look forward to Jimmy Johnson and our other J's here tonight and what you're bringing to the Narrows Botanical Gardens and to our community. So thank you. So now the Traffic and Transportation Committee will review the DOT plans to install 7 city bike stations within Community Board 10. All the locations are located in the north end of our district near the Community Board 7 border. Just to review once again our meeting protocols, the order of the meeting will be that we'll hear our presentation first. That'll be followed by committee member questions and comments, and then we will open it up to the public for any additional questions or comments. So thank you all once again. So now, Leroy, are you going to be leading this part? All right.
I'm actually
welcome
gonna.
again.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here this evening, committee members. For those of you who don't know, I am the community coordinator for CB10. So if there's any issues that you have, I'm the person who kind of deals with it. Josephine and I have a very good relationship. If you have any DOT issues, please let her know and she will get in contact with me. Today, we're going to be talking about Citibike expansion. As Jane said, the stations that will be in CB10. And I think I'm going to turn it over to, I think we have Lisa Marasco and Jesse Cabrera with us. And I'm not sure who's going to do the presentation. Jesse?
Yeah, you can do it to me.
Okay, so I'll pass it on to Jesse and he will go along with the presentation.
And we'd also just like to remind our people who are on this Zoom call, if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone because we do hear your background noise. So thank you once again.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Great, so my name is Jesse, another J, and I'm here with the city's Department of Transportation. I am the outreach coordinator for Bike Share DOT. And along with me, I have Lisa Marasco. She is the planner for the area. So we have a presentation for you about Citibike Phase 3 expansion. The first half will basically go through Citibike 101, just facts about the program in general. And the second half will dive deeper into our planning sort of principles, and more specifically, the stations located within CB10. So just generally, what is bike share? You know, bike share is a network of shared bicycles. Their main intention is to be used for transportation. You know, this adds another sort of transportation option to New York City, which has, you know, you have walking, you have ferries, you have private vehicles, you have the subway, and they're a good sweet spot for places that might be a little bit too far for a walk, but maybe too short to maybe take your car or the subway. The system operates 24/7. It only shuts down with heavy extreme winter storms. And there's no need to worry about bike storage or maintenance. That's all handled by the bike share operator. And, you know, seeing how this was a joint environmental and transportation meeting, another sort of positive effect it has is both for health and environment. You know, we're always looking ways for people to move about the city in a healthy and environmentally conscious way, and bike share can do that for some people. So specifically, New York City's bike share system is called Citibike, and it's a private-public partnership. So DOT, we're responsible for all system planning and outreach, and Lyft, who you might know as the rideshare company, they are responsible for all the day-to-day operations and maintenance of the equipment. And the service is funded through sponsorships and the memberships that they sell. So Citibike is a station-based share system. So if you see on the bottom picture, there are stations every couple of blocks or or so, and they could be either on the roadway or the sidewalk. They're not hardwired into the ground, and they are solar powered, so there's no need for heavy digging or trenching. And to give a sort of larger overview of how far Citibike has come, back in 2013, Citibike started in this light blue area. So, you know, downtown, mid and downtown Manhattan, downtown Brooklyn, all that light blue area with 330 stations, 6,000 bikes. Afterward, a couple years later, we expanded to the Upper West and the Upper East sides in Manhattan, went into Western Queens for the first time, and further into Brooklyn. And that sort of doubled the amount of stations and bikes available. And what we started in 2019 is this phase 3 expansion. So everything that you see in this dark blue area. So that includes, you know, completing all of Manhattan, going to much of the Western Bronx for the first time, and going deeper into both Brooklyn and Queens. And this dark blue area is roughly the same size as the first 2 areas combined. So we're expanding a lot relatively quickly. And just some sort of quick ridership numbers. You can see so far since the program has launched, there has been 111 million trips to date. So last year in 2020, 19.4 million trips were taken. That was slightly down from 2019, but I think that's relatively given considering the last year that we've had. And in 2020, there were 600,000 rides taken for the first time. So as we expand, you know, New Yorkers are starting to use this system more and more. Some quick sort of pricing points. So Citibike is for a single ride, you can purchase a 30-minute ride for $3. There are also 3-day day passes and 3-day passes, respectively, which unlock unlimited amount of rides for in a 24 and 72-hour period. But most of our rides and what most people choose is this annual membership, which is $180 a year, or roughly $15 a month. And that gives you unlimited 45-minute rides. And not only that, there are a number of discounts that are offered. And I think the biggest one that we sort of push a lot of people to is this Nycha and SNAP recipient discount, which allows people who receive SNAP or food stamps or who live in city housing access to Citibike for $5 a month, which is about a third of the cost. So it's if it's possible, it's a really good way for people to travel affordably. And as you know, as the city and Lyft sort of expand to all these new places, they want to make sure that, you know, people know that this is a service that could be used by anybody. So Lyft has a number of sort of equity efforts and programs that they have with community organizations. I think the biggest one that they usually sort of point out are these community grants, which they partner with community-based organizations to sort of let people know how Citibike works, you know, give out free rides so they can sort of test out the bikes for themselves before they purchase their own, and sort of just get people into thinking about how they move about the city. And, you know, as we expand, safety is our sort of #1 priority. So whenever, as we expand, we want to make sure that people are safe. You know, usually, you know, 2020 notwithstanding, we have helmet giveaways, light and bell giveaways that we go over the rules of the road and let people know sort of how you're supposed to interact with, you know, other motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians. And not only that, what we try to do is improve bicycle infrastructure wherever bike share expansion is happening through the 2019 Green Wave Plan. So this sort of goes hand in hand to make sure, you know, as we're expanding and giving people access to bikes, we also want to make sure they're safe on those bikes. And lastly, as I sort of mentioned, there has been a lot of changes due to COVID-19 in the last year. Lyft wanted to make sure that everyone's safe, so they upped their sort of cleaning of the bikes, especially in those high contact areas where you have like the shifters or the gears, the handlebars, just to make sure everyone is safe. And another thing, I think the big thing is this critical workforce membership program. So this gave out free memberships to essential workers, which included people like in healthcare, people who work in food-related nonprofits, to help them get to where they needed to go. And since that program started in April 2020 to December, those members took 800,000 rides. And they're going to continue that work by expanding and opening expanding stations near vaccination hubs as the city rolls out its large sort of vaccination programs, to make sure, just to give people who work there and who people need to go there, just another way to get there safely. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lisa. She's going to talk a little bit more about the planning process and the sort of site-specific things that that go into this work.
Thanks, Jesse. I also wanted to flag, I threw it in the chat, but there are 2 new stations near the Brooklyn Armory Terminal that we installed this week to help support the hub there. So just wanted to flag that. So there are some stations nearby, so please use them. So I will be going through a little bit about the planning process. There are 4 major components, which is siting, outreach, draft plan creation, and then finally installation. If you want to next, please, Jesse. So really the foundation of the program is this dense network. It's really been, why the program has been so successful here. As you can see, we have this grid over the city, and we place 1 station in each one of those grids. It's about 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. And that really ensures that you're no more than a 3 to 5 minute walk once you're in the service area. And what this does is it creates a network that is reliable, it's convenient, and really complements the existing transportation networks that are existing in communities. We really want this to support and be first last mile for folks. Some of the considerations for site specifics are really going to be hydrants, utilities, ADA accessibility factors. And those are just a few of the things that we consider with site specifics. A little bit about our outreach process. It's been a little bit different due to COVID-19. But what we have been successful with is getting a lot of feedback. We received so much comments for this particular community, about 900 comments for, the bulk of this is in CB7, but as you know, there's just a sliver in CB10. So we had a lot of great feedback there. We are still in the process of hosting, stakeholder meetings. We also hosted a town hall in conjunction with Lyft, as well as presented to Community Board 7. Thank you. So a little bit about the draft plan creation. So really there are 3 major components that go into how we select the sites. We do that with the Borough Commissioner's Office. So one of them is community feedback. As you can see on this map, we'll go into more detail on the next slide. But it goes into, you can see, yeah, thank you. The darker the blue means the more preference, the bigger the circle, the greater the number of comments around those. And so where possible, we would eliminate stations. And those are largely due to Lyft operational considerations. As Jesse mentioned, they do have some operational considerations, primarily like solar access, but some of these are just comments that we receive from community members saying, this intersection might not be the best for a station location. Great, and then we also, adjust as needed. We can go forward, thanks. So we are still in the process of gathering feedback. The draft plan has been released on our website. Right now, we're still in the process of technical screenings, doing surveys, and also doing site-specific outreach, which means any station that goes down, we notify adjacent property owners so folks aren't surprised when a station goes down. And once those stations are installed, we do continued outreach, monitoring and adjustment. And as of now, we plan to start installing in this community in February. So this is the larger overview of the draft plan. As I said, the majority of it is in CB7, but what we're going to do is review the 7 sites in CB10. So as you can see, just to kind of walk you through what these mean, the squares are going to be roadbed locations. The triangles are going to be sidewalk locations. And then you'll see a letter in the center side of the street. So if you see the one on the north side of Wakeman, that one right there is going to show you sort of where it is in relation to the streets. So as we said, there are 5. There are 3 in the roadbed, or 4 in the roadbed, and 3 on the sidewalk. There's one that's kind of half in CB7, but the majority of it is in CB10. So we wanted to include that one on 7th Avenue at 62nd, right near the subway station. Yeah, so that's the end of the presentation. If we want to just kind of chat through any questions or concerns you have about the program or any of the sites selected in particular, we're happy to do that now.
Go.
Josephine, you're muted again.
Okay, well, thank you
Oh,
very
I
much.
always
We
do
can
that.
talk.
I got to get used to this. I'm sorry. So Jane, we'll turn it back to you.
Okay, Josephine. Joyce, I might be having some trouble with my internet. It keeps freezing up. So I'm sorry for that interruption. Josephine, I was going to just check in with you first before we go to the committee members.
Yes, we have a few committee members that have their hands raised, so we'll go to them. But I did want to mention to the committee that we did invite DOT. Initially, it was our understanding that the next phase of the Citibike expansion would really be focused in the CB7 area. So once it was learned that there were several stations in Board 10 on the northern end, right at the border, we thought it important to share with the committee and with the public nearby. So thank you to DOT for responding to our response. So you have 3 board members who have questions, Steve, Harrison, Doris, and Michael Devine.
Okay, thank you. Go
Steve?
ahead, Steve.
Yeah, if this station's, they're all going to be basically going across the northern border of our district, it really doesn't help us a lot from the point of view of getting around in our district. It helps us get around in, Community Board 7. While I really like Citibike, my question for you is, when are we going to get, how do we know that it's going to work well in Community Board 10, since it's really not in Community Board 10 and doesn't really help us a lot there? And then the second question I have, which is a small one, is that you were talking about unlimited 45-minute, unlimited 45-minute rides if you take an annual. I'm a little bit confused by that. Does that mean that you can take, keep it all day, or you only have to take it 45 minutes, then you have to stop, and then you have to do it again? So the 2 questions I have is, when's it coming into Community Board 10, and explain to us how that 45-minute thing works.
Yeah, sure. So I can explain the second part first, and then I will pass it over to Lisa to talk more about further expansion. So as I mentioned earlier, the main thing that we want Citibike to be is a transportation network. So if all the members decided to take it out all day, there wouldn't be any circulation of the bikes. So that's why that 45-minute sort of time limit is there. So the way that you explained it, the second way that you explained it is correct. So let's say if you're riding around and it's about 40 minutes and you know your time is coming up, you would dock your bike into the station and then just retake it out, and then you have basically a fresh 45 minutes. And you can do that as many times as you want with your annual pass.
What happens if you go 46 minutes and 50 minutes?
So if there are sort of overage sort of charges to sort of incentivize people to keep it within that 45-minute time limit. Let's say for whatever reason, you know, you're just at 45 minutes and you go to a station and it's all sort of full, you can ask for a time extension on the kiosk. You can say like, hey, I'm trying to dock my bike, but it's all full. And it'll give you, I believe, like another 15 minutes as a grace period. So you can find another station to dock your bike.
And the first question? Coming into community.
It's a great question. I think we are eager to expand to all parts of the city, but unfortunately we do have limited resources. And the way that we roll out the program is, you know, in a really thoughtful way. We like to come to community boards. It just takes a lot of time and care to make sure that we're placing stations and coming into communities so that we can get feedback in a way that's meaningful. And that just means the program gets rolled out a little bit slower. In terms of the way that we created these phase 3 borders, we knew that we wanted to, you know, get down to as much of South Brooklyn as possible, but really sort of set a foundation for the next phase of Citibike expansion. So right now we're in the process of, you know, we're expanding faster than we ever have before. And that's, you know, kudos to our partners Lyft, who have really committed a lot of equipment, time, and money into making this effort possible. But so we hope to get through this next phase 3 expansion. And then of course, you know, I think Bay Ridge and the remaining parts of Community Board 10 would make, you know, a lot of sense to come to next, but unfortunately not in this phase of expansion.
Doris, then Michael.
Okay, I have 3 questions. Do you know how many docking spaces there would be per station?
Yes, so for these 7, on average, you're going to see about 22 docks per station. Each one is going to vary slightly. 19 is the smallest station that we'd install in any place. But 22 is the average for CB10 sites.
Thank you. And then on your map, where you have Wakeman Place and 3rd Avenue, you're planning to have that on the sidewalk. What is the width of the sidewalk there, and how will that impact pedestrian traffic, a bus stop, and street cleaning?
All great questions. So when we do site stations on the sidewalk, we do make sure that they are 15 feet or greater in width to make sure that there's always enough pedestrian clearance for folks. In terms of the one on Wakeman, we always have, you know, a very specific distances from subway stops or subway and bus stops. So we don't ever place a station, you know, in a bus stop footprint. We'll leave about 10 to 15 feet from those spaces. So we always want to make sure that we don't we want to complement, we don't want to overlap with the existing network.
And then your easternmost station on what we call Eric Place, which is a very strange block. Has the school safety group reviewed that? Because that's an area that they have come to us with serious safety concerns before, and how this will impact that location.
That's a great question. We do review all of our locations with internal units. We share them with our draft plan, but since you flagged this for us, I will make sure that our school safety unit reviews that one in particular.
So you have not reviewed it as of yet?
No, we do share these draft plans with internal units. So they have a copy of the draft plan, but we have not specifically requested them to do a thorough investigation of that intersection. No.
Thank you.
Michael Devine.
Hi. How do you measure the sort of the success of a location where you cite them? And if you deem one of these sites less successful, are they changed or moved around?
Good question. So, you know, when we move into new areas, it's always hard to judge exactly, you know, when, you know, how the uptake is going to come, and generally on border or what we call our fringe stations, we generally see lots of activity. So you'll either see stations that are like very full or very empty, which is why we wanted to make sure that we peppered, this border with a lot of stations so that we ensured, if one was full, you would have like a very quick and easy access to another station as well. It's part of sort of our built-in network density. And some of the things we look for in terms of success are trip starts and ends is what we call them. So making sure that, the station is used. We also monitor if, we're finding that people bring bikes there, but they don't necessarily take bikes out. I'm trying to understand how we're going to deal with like what we call rebalancing issues. I think something that is a benefit for your community is that Sunset Park is a hub for our operators. And so they're very close. And so they'll be able to respond to needs of the stations here very quickly, which I think will be a benefit and amenity to these particular sites.
Thank you. I just would also like to add that when I look through your slides, your phases seem to be in increments of like 2 to 5 years. So when you're looking at that, this is phase 3, is that kind of the ballpark for the next phase? And I see how you widen the map. So as Steve has asked about when it would become more directly into Community Board 10, would that also be on the 2 to 5 year projection? Based on budget, of course.
That's a really great observation. And yes, we do essentially how we've built out the network is so we started in, the very dense business core and then tried to really build it off of that. So that way we're always kind of, funneling bikes like back into the system. And you're right. So phase 3 will be completed by 2024. We're hoping to complete it sooner than that. We're working as fast as we can to get it down sooner than that. And then starting in 2024, I think, based on where, our operators are and where we are, we hope to start discussions about what a phase 4 would look like. And yeah, I think the rollout, it would be on a similar timeline of a 2 to 4 year. And usually we kind of double the efforts. I don't want to guarantee that we would double the efforts again. For this next phase, but we certainly would want to try to get as much, expand the service area as much as possible with the amount of equipment we could commit to.
Because one of the changes that we have seen within our community is the growth of the ferry that is down by the 69th Street Pier. And this now too is really a transportation hub for our residents in our community. When we had originally spoken at one point at one presentation that I recall, those of us who had inquired about having bike stations closer to Shore Parkway, Shore Road, we were told that it really tends that the directionality is to view it as transportation, not leisure, and that they weren't looking at that area. But we have to also note that part of that area has changed for our community with the rise in the usage of the ferry that is there now on the 69th Street Pier, Veterans Pier. So I just want to make that note that that's similar to what Michael has already said about where is it useful, where is it needed. We want to make sure that we advocate for our residents that utilize that and that might be something convenient for them, for those who use it.
And what I would say is, like, you're exactly right. We were actually in conversations with EDC now, and we're working towards placing a station very close to the ferry. So hopefully when we release an updated plan, that location will be revealed, but it's still in sort of the coordination process, but we are trying to get a station as close as possible to that ferry landing. And we understand, connectivity to the larger community is key.
Yeah. Right. And just one other thing, you did have a slide about COVID, and certainly during this pandemic, we've seen an increase in the need for that people want to have transportation options and the ability to ride independently during this time is really critical for a lot of people to feel peace of mind and well-being as they commute. But I would also like to just make sure that we're continuing to advocate for health and safety. And the health and the cleaning of these stations really must be something that just citywide, we have to really make sure that we are upholding the highest standards for all of our residents who may be using this, or our visitors who may be using this, and what other health and safety standards and guidelines that you can offer. People cannot go to a gym and share a bike, a stationary bike. So we worry and we're concerned that there should be no risk for anyone who is using a city bike. And that comes down to the cleaning and the maintenance. And that's on you guys. And I want to
that's a great point, and something that I think Jesse kind of talked about a little bit during the COVID-19 slide, is that we have, anytime there's a valet operation, and just to kind of flag the 2 new stations near the Brooklyn Army Terminal that are really there to help support vaccine efforts. One of the stations, the one that is at 58th Street and 2nd Avenue, will have a valet, and most of our valets right now, we've sort of, reconfigured where we're placing a valet. And so a valet is when 2 staff members are at a station, and they really ensure that there's always a dock or a bike available. So it just increases capacity of the station, essentially. But because those are next to medical facilities, each time a bike gets checked in, it gets cleaned and disinfected. Anytime a bike gets sent to the warehouse, which happens, very frequently, that will also get cleaned down and disinfected as well. So those are things that are happening on an ongoing basis, but particularly ones that are next to medical facilities. So we have increased our response to making sure that we are disinfecting bikes as much as possible to ensure that, that the public is as safe as possible while utilizing this.
Will that happen at all 7 of the stations that are coming into our community board, or it's only happening at select stations at this time?
At this time, it's only ones that have valets operational. But like I said, anytime, a bike is taken back into the warehouse, bikes are sort of, they're taken in once a month. I know that's a long time. Bikes are used, maybe a few times, a day. But I think, the public also should be diligent about, making sure, when I go out to the grocery store and I touch a bunch of things, when I come home, I make sure to wash my hands right away. So I think, promoting safe practices for folks is wise
Right.
as well.
Well, so many businesses and things, they're giving out masks to encourage mask wearing. Is this something where you're going to consider just even other PPE, plastic gloves? Just asking if this is the kind of thing that you're looking into.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. What I can do is bring it up to our operators about how we could potentially roll something like that out. It does seem logistically challenging, but something that I can say that the community board did bring up and express as a concern. I will absolutely, talk about that with our vendor.
Thank you. We just want to make sure we're ensuring health and safety every step along the way, and ensuring that it makes sense for our community, bring the bikes where they're looking to use them. So thank you. Do any of our other committee members have, Harmon, thank you. I see your hand.
The minute I heard the word Citibike in Bay Ridge, what came to mind was I haven't ridden a bike in 20 years because the last time I did, somebody rear-ended me. I went flying, and it was a very expensive dental trip. But I'm glad you brought up the pier, because the first thing that came to mind, if there was a docking station at the pier and I could ride, say, early morning or something along Shore Road, I could get there easy, get my bike, take a nice ride and come back. I would use Citibike, when the weather's good, I would use it as much as possible. But riding in the streets, I wouldn't even consider it for like 2 seconds. But when I was working at I would get off at 59th Street in the city, and I would see Citibike, and I would see different bike rental places. And a lot of time, just waiting for the light to change, I would hear people say, I didn't think about a bike ride, but because it was going into the park, that's how I see Shore Road. They may not say, well, let's go for a bike ride, but if it's there and it's available, then it's almost like recreational. Somebody could ride it home. It's something a family could do, because space is a premium. And a lot of people, you know, they don't want to have a bike in the house. It just takes too much room. But if they could rent a bike for a few hours, take their family out, I think like a path or a docking station near Shore Road to make it easy for them. And like you said, for transportation also, I think that would be really beneficial on two parts. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you're right. I think having them, you know, near as close as possible to like recreational facilities is wonderful. Like we also, you know, as we keep saying, we try to complement the existing networks that we have. And if, you know, and this is also your opportunity if you know, within the phase 3 borders that we have, if there are additional suggestions for like stations, you know, that you think we should consider, we'd be happy to take those comments and take second look and see what we can do about potentially adding some additional stations or, you know, moving some stations around, that sort of thing.
Well, maybe even as part of phase 4, if there is a pilot program for leisure bikes, the way Carmen is advocating, you have beautiful green spaces on Shore Road. You have, of course, a Prospect Park, you know, just even if you tried it in 2 places to see how it works, to do a study or a sample there. You know, we just want to make sure we're advocating for our community to have that access. So thank you, Carmen, for bringing that up.
Oh, can I make one more point? When I was going to the senior center, there was only one woman that I knew who rode a bike on a regular basis. And everybody would tell her, oh, you're so brave, this and that. And their biggest fear was drivers. And I think that even seniors would venture say, you know what, I'm still in good shape. Let me try a bike ride or something, you know, with friends or something. So I really hope it's something that you can add to your plan or really bring back and work on.
Absolutely. And something I would add is, you know, we do work with community partners to set up programs to help people feel a little bit safer because we understand that everybody has different comfort levels with riding in the road. So there are many programs that exist. And, you know, once we roll out maybe a little bit more into CB10 or in conjunction with CB7, we can connect you to some of those resources to get, you know, free access to the bikes, get people comfortable before they even commit to really getting a membership and seeing what it's like to ride in the city as well.
Yeah, and one of the best rides is riding from Bay Ridge all the way across to Bensonhurst. You can have a docking station at both ends. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I see Doris's hand is up.
Yes, I would just like to see the slide that you had with the location of the docking stations, because I 2 of them struck me, so I was just curious as the others.
Can I share my screen? Perfect.
Yeah, and Lisa, while you're sharing that, I just want to throw out that Wakeman Place, I know you had a February timeline, but Wakeman between Ridge and 3rd Avenue, we awoke like over the weekend to a capital sewer project there that is going to be about 5 weeks. I know there's some callers on this call that live on Wakeman Place, so it's expected to be a 5-week project, and we're working actually with DDC on kind of understanding the project a little bit more and its scope. So I just wanted to share that with you while you're putting up the screen.
That flag. And if you have contacts with DDC for that.
Yes, I will get that to you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think something else to mention is
4, 5.
The everywhere in this whole area, including Sunset Park, will start in February. So since you're sort of more towards the bottom part, you might see these stations more towards like March. But please still send us any information just in case we need to make further coordination.
Okay.
Great.
Wow.
Right. So for those of us who aren't wearing their eyeglasses, can I ask you to just once again give us those coordinates for those stations as Doris has asked? Thank you.
Sure. So what you're going to see is the first station that I'm going to talk about is going to be on, I'm going to move east to west, north to south. So I'll start with the south side of 66th Street, just east of 2nd Avenue, and then I'm going to move south to the north side of Wakeman Place, just east of 2nd Avenue. The next station is on 3rd Avenue on the west side of 3rd Avenue, just north of Wakeman Place. The next station is going to be on the east side of 4th Avenue, just north of 67th Street. Next station is the east side of 5th Avenue, just north of 67th Street. And the next station is on the north side of 67th Street at Eric Place. The final station is on the east side of 7th Avenue, just south of 62nd Street. That one's just on the border of CB7 and 10, right in front of the subway station that's there. So those are the 7 stations in CB10.
Have you done traffic studies at some of these locations?
What we do is some of the stations, depending on either the flow or truck routes or other various road uses, we'll send this to our geometric design unit, and they will run an analysis on our behalf to make sure that it meets all of our engineering criteria. But what we generally try to do is we already have sort of a toolkit of technically viable sites or locations. So we try to stay within those bounds, and when they kind of, when they hit like a certain, like if it's a truck route, we'll just like send it over to folks to kind of make sure that everything looks good on the engineering front.
Because I would just comment that the one at J. Allen Payne Park and 3rd Avenue, that's a very problematic, difficult area. And I think you should reconsider that one.
All right, can you say that one more time?
There's on the map, it's John Allen Payne Park and 3rd Avenue.
That one, no, right. That one is a kind of a funky intersection, but that one's on the sidewalk, just next to the park there.
It's still a very problematic intersection. And I really think you should consider it.
Okay.
Take greater consideration of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Josephine, would you be able to see if we have any other committee members who had comments or questions before we put it up to the public?
So Steve Harrison, your hand is up. I'm not sure if that was from before or you just put it up again.
That's from before. Thank you.
Okay. So I do not see any more committee member questions. So if anyone from the public has a question, I guess we can move to that. Landon and Ellis.
Hi, so my name's Ellis, this is Landon.
Hi.
We just had a question about the station on the corner of Wakeman and Ridge Boulevard. There's already very limited parking on this block due to the express bus and the fire station on this block. I also noticed that there's another station right down the block on 3rd Avenue.
Labeled S.
Labeled S.
Plus the W at the other end of our block.
Right. So there's a sidewalk station W, and then there's the S station on the other side of the bridge on Ridge Boulevard over the highway. Why is it necessary for the N station to be there? The buses take that corner very sharp as well. It's a dangerous corner.
That's my other concern is as I'm sure you know, because you've probably poured over these maps, Lisa, is that it's a really weird intersection. And not only am I nervous for the sense that we already have very limited parking on our block because of the express bus, which has 2 different stops on our block, a drop off and a pickup, and half of our block's not available for parking because of the fire station. So we already have major parking issues. But that aside, my issue is safety for people, because with that weird 5-way intersection, people come flying off the highway, and then the express bus takes a very wide turn to make that turn. So I'm just curious as to why it's there. Is there a way that it can be moved onto Ridge Boulevard? I guess you would say then it's close to S, but that then brings us back to Ellis's question of why both N and S.
Both great questions. So, what I kind of mentioned, part of why the system is successful is because stations are, a 3 to 5 minute walk. So a lot of times, stations are very close together, but that density is really what makes the system reliable and convenient. In terms of the station on the north side of Wakeman, we do know it's not going to be set like directly at the intersection. There will be an offset there. At this particular intersection. But what I will say is, we can again review it with our engineers and discuss. I do understand your challenges about parking. We can review it again and see if there's any alternative locations. But I know, where we could, we tried to place stations on the sidewalk, understanding that parking was a major concern for this community specifically.
I just had one more question.
Yeah,
Can you also guarantee that we will not get a protected bike lane if this plan goes through? Because I've seen protected bike lanes, and they take up half a block of parking.
Yeah, I mean,
and they usually follow these stations.
Yeah. What I would say is that we do work with the bike program to make sure that our systems are complementary to one another. We don't set exactly where we're going. I don't know if, Leroy has any additional knowledge or inside knowledge on if we're going to get a protected bike lane, but I believe there is a bike lane here already on.
There is.
There is.
I just don't want to. There is one. I just don't want it to be a protected bike lane because then you lose a lot of parking.
Well, what I was going to say is no one can guarantee anything, but at this point there is no plans on putting a protected bike lane there.
Okay.
But I can't guarantee will it happen in 10, 15 years from now. I don't know.
No, that's fair enough.
But as of right now, there's no plans to put a protected bike lane there.
All right, thank you. And if you could reconsider the location of the Wakeman side, the Wakeman and Ridge Boulevard station, maybe it can go on Ridge Boulevard as opposed to on Wakeman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Landon and Ellis. Mark?
Hi.
Yes.
You don't have to say that.
Okay. I was like, Chesney?
It's Cesare, but yes, it should
Cesare,
be Cesare.
okay.
Well, first, thanks for the presentation. And I guess I have two questions. One is, are you going to have e-bikes at any of these stations? And also, in terms of phase expansion, because it would be really helpful to get it into sort of Southern Brooklyn or Southern Bay Ridge, is the speed of the phase, is it more, how much of it is determined by what the city is doing versus what Lyft has for resources? If you can give me sort of how you guys work together or how that typically works.
Sure, that's a great question. So you're right, it is a public-private partnership, and we do work very closely with Lyft to determine what sort of commitments they're able to provide, and then knowing what, how much equipment they have, and knowing what our density is, what sort of how much further we can actually expand our service area. So depending on factors, that are years out, I really can't predict what the climate is going to be like. We are on, this is not our first operator, so we don't know what the future holds for bike share. But I know that the city is very committed. This is a very successful program. It's something that for right now is a priority for the city as well. So as soon as we can expand further, I know that we will.
Thank you. Brian Hedden, you're next.
Hi. So I have a couple of questions. I guess one would be around the parking issue. So this is your third wave of expansion. So you should have a pretty good idea based on your other expansion plans. I assume that you have an idea of how many car parking spots you've been repurposing for these Citibike docks relative to all the available car parking spots. And I seem to recall at one point, Brad Lander, when the expansion in CV6 happened, said something along the lines of there was one spot being repurposed for every 150 parking spots So 1 out of 150, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I don't know if that is accurate, and I don't know if that's stayed the same. I don't know if you have any updated information about that.
What I would say specifically about parking is that it's different in every community. There are some communities where we're able to utilize, either like what we call like truffled areas, so pedestrianized parts of the roadway that are not going to take parking. We try to utilize what we also call like daylighted intersections, so intersections that have like no standing for maybe 20 feet that just help increase visibility at those corners. We try to, take those spaces. So where we can, we try to minimize any of that, like parking lots in communities or sidewalks. And some communities just don't have very wide sidewalks, so it's just dependent neighborhood by neighborhood. I don't have those figures for you in terms of like how many particular parking spaces are repurposed, but generally stations are anywhere from 50 to 60 feet long, if that gives you any sort of reference.
Okay, got that. And then I guess the other question would be just along the borders of the expansion plan. I get that, the idea is to hopefully come down with a phase 4 that pushes further into Bay Ridge, further into Sunset and whatnot. But just in terms of the specific borders, to Steve's original point back when he made it, that really just kind of comes right into the borders of the neighborhood and just kind of stops. And I was wondering if there was any sort of leeway, for this particular expansion plan to push forward by maybe like another layer of stations, because there are a number of destinations that would cover. So I'm just thinking about all of the commercial areas, the businesses that are right on the northern end of 3rd Avenue, even 4th Avenue in that spot, 5th Avenue. It's sort of a destination-rich area that, that initial, I guess, that frontier that you've got right now just only barely scratches the surface of. And I was just wondering if like there's any leeway of getting like, pushing that frontier one more layer in. So I guess that would be like an additional, that would be an additional 5 stations if you just pushed it one additional layer. So what the lift would be for that?
I think that would be very dependent. We have had stations in the past that are, what we call sponsored by folks. So we can get those in that way, but these borders were negotiated and it's part of our larger phase 3, the contract that we have with our operators. So in terms of expanding the phase 3 border, I think it would require a little bit of effort, but if it's just a handful of stations where we're just trying to get to a particular business core, perhaps that's something that we can talk about with Lyft, our operators, to see if there's additional equipment that we can find, or if they're willing to commit some additional resources to hit some places just a little bit further into CB10. So that is something that I can, take note of and bring up with our vendor. If we're talking about a handful of sites, that might be a little bit of an easier lift, to get those stations. But I agree. I think we want to get as many stations down as possible to help service this community as well.
Thank you. So next I see Dean has his hand up, and then Catherine Jackson.
Yes, so Lisa, I think I heard you saying 2024 might be the next expansion further into Bay Ridge. I would hope you would speak with the business improvement districts, the bids that we have, and also the businesses, because one comment that businesses made in a recent survey, a number said they wish there was more parking for their merchants. Now, having said that, personally, use of the bikes may increase people's use of the stores. So I'm not saying either way, but I would really want to see the merchants have at least their opinions heard. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Depending on communities, and the bids that are there, we do always work with them. They're all over, the city. So we do try to coordinate with folks as much as possible to make sure that we're not just placing stations in communities without any sort of feedback from folks that might be directly impacted by the placement.
And if I could say, Lisa, prior to coming full-fledged into a particular district, we'd have this awesome and large outreach that we work with the community board, the electeds, the nonprofits, business districts. So when we come full-fledged on the next expansion, hopefully it will be expanded southly in CB10, we will definitely make a large outreach to everyone. And when working with Josephine in the number of years I've known her, once we do that, she will definitely get the word out. So
yeah. So I have to say, in this expansion, it was all CB7 doing it.
Right,
you know.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, there's some people on the call, we weren't expecting any in Board 10. So the fact that we have, 7 stations in Board 10 was a, a surprise that it was included at this round, because we really thought we were in the next phase, not until a few more years. So
for sure.
So we will absolutely do that outreach. Catherine Jackson, and then Stephanie Mahaney.
Okay, hi. Okay, so I live in the lower end of Bay Ridge in the 90s. I just want to say I'm totally supportive of these bike docking stations in the northern part of Bay Ridge. I do use Citibike, but in the past, if I was riding in Brooklyn, it's like, okay, I have to dock it at a certain point because you can't get down to the ridge. I know it'd be great in the future to expand it into the parts of the rest of Bay Ridge and Diker Heights neighborhoods. So that those areas could be more accessible. Yeah, I just wanted to put out, I am totally on board with all this. This is awesome. And Citibike is great. And, I can't wait for this to happen and more stations further down in Brooklyn.
Great, thank you.
For your comments and your support.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. Lisa, I'm not sure if you answered this earlier, but will you be bringing e-bikes to the 7 stations in Bay Ridge? And just a follow-on question, in your expansion, particularly in the residential areas, have there been any issues with riders riding on sidewalks rather than using the bike lanes? Thank you.
Good questions. And sorry, I think somebody did ask that and I didn't answer it. So e-bikes, we do have, they are a certain percentage. Jesse, do you have the number of e-bikes that we have in our fleet right now?
Yeah, I believe there's about 3,000 at this point.
So we have about 3,000 e-bikes. And what essentially we see is that they end up floating all over the system. What's really great about the map that we have, you can either use it on the map or on the website, and it shows you how many e-bikes are there. It also tells you how much charge is left in the battery. So those are really helpful. And usually what we find is there's always a handful in each community. They really do spread out throughout the service area. We've been really pleasantly surprised that they are just everywhere. So that's really exciting. You will find them a little bit more, on sort of the fringe borders, because we find that people who are going, the furthest out are the ones that are utilizing those bikes, because it does take a little bit more effort maybe to get a little, further south in Brooklyn as well. And then in terms of sidewalk riding, unfortunately, it does happen sometimes. I won't say that, all of our users are going to abide by all of the rules of the road. What I will say is there are safety, we have safety, just safety rules on the handlebars that reinforce safe cycling. We do put on there, do not ride on the sidewalk. We try to, have our members follow those rules. Occasionally, you do have some bad actors, but if you're seeing it in your community that it's a big problem, we're happy to help sort of mitigate some of those issues and nuisances.
Okay, great. Thank you. Angel, and then John Tomac.
Great. So I just wanted to thank you again for this awesome presentation. I was actually an annual member of Citibike pre-COVID because I would commute to North Brooklyn, where Citibike is everywhere, and it's actually great to get around without having to take the bus or taking the subway. But coming back down to Bay Ridge, we're stuck with the R train. A lot of times the R train is not very reliable, and you'll find out you have to wait 20 minutes sometimes for an R train, and I'd love to be able to hop out, get on a Citibike, and go home. I live on the lower half of Bay Ridge. I would love to see Citibike stations next to every R train station in Bay Ridge all the way down 4th Avenue.
through the business districts on 5th Avenue and 3rd Avenue, and like really expanding across 86th Street all the way to Bensonhurst and like out towards Coney Island as well. Like there's lots of places that people bike. And no, we don't have like the safe bike lanes that we need, including protected bike lanes, like really, especially extending 4th Avenue all the way from Sunset Park down to the water. That's like a no-brainer that we should have done a long time ago. Not sure why it's not done. But I think that I also like to bike to the store, being able to hop on a bike outside my building, go to the store, come back, biking around the neighborhood to do just all kinds of errands that are a little bit too far, that we just can't do all the time. And we have a car. Like parking can be hard, but like as we move like further into the 2020s and climate change is a real thing, driving your car around Bay Ridge is not like an ideal situation. Like you need to be able to walk, you need to be able to bike and use like other more sustainable methods of transportation. So I think that's something we should be pushing going forward.
Thank you. John Tomac?
Hi, thanks for taking my comment question. I think I want to just reiterate what's been mentioned a bunch of times here. I think Citibike is fantastic. It was kind of responsible for me getting on a bike again for the first time in about 10 years. And I've been kind of a regular user, but obviously I'm not a member because it hasn't been down in this portion of Southern Brooklyn. So I don't get to use it as much as I would like. So I'm kind of excited that it's finally making an appearance in Bay Ridge and Sunset Park. I'm also kind of pleased that it looks like DOT is actually starting to plan, in a way that's not confined by the borders of the community boards, and starts to look at sort of neighborhoods and and how they sort of fit together better. And one of the things I was wondering is right now you have the plan here, which is to put a bunch of docks near the Leif Erikson Greenway, which is about 500 feet away from the end of the protected bike lane that's on 4th Avenue. And I'm just wondering if there's any plan in the works from DOT to sort of create that connection from 64th Street to the Leif Erikson Greenway, so that, when I get on a bike at, 4th Avenue and, 67th Street, that, I'm actually getting into a protected lane and not riding for 500 feet through all sorts of crazy traffic before I reach that bike lane.
Great point. So what I would say is I know, in CB7, while we didn't quite show, a very detailed map, along the 4th and 5th Avenue corridors, we do have a lot of stations that support that network there. In terms of getting it a little further south from what we have, currently, I think, Brian had touched on this comment a little bit, too, just to get it a little further south into Bay Ridge. And certainly that's something we can, chat about with our operators, and we'd love to explore that opportunity and see what could be possible. But you're right, like, I think it's great to support all of the existing infrastructure to make sure that folks have direct access to those bike facilities as well.
Yeah, I guess this is more of a I guess more of a bike lane question. I know that, obviously down here we just kind of got the painted bike lanes on the street that sort of appeared elsewhere in the city like 10 years ago, and it seems like we're with the addition of Citibike now 8 years after the rest of the city got it is a step in the right direction, but we're still kind of behind. I'm just wondering if there's going to be anything done by DOT to sort of catch up as more people are on bikes.
I don't know. I know that we do have priority zones. Leroy,
Okay.
Do you know of any additional plans specifically in South Brooklyn?
Right now, I don't know specifically, but we're definitely in conversations about it. And we will be talking to the community board as well in terms of how to make those connections, as you were saying. So we are in conversation right now. And once we start to really put something together, we will let the community board know.
Thank you, Leroy. Jane, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh, wait, I have one more question. Christopher Layden? And then I'll turn it back to you, Jane.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'll make it quick. I just wanted to suggest to everyone, the committee and the DOT, that we think of these options both in terms of transportation, so eventually connecting to subway stations and bus hubs and ferries, as well as recreation, because I already see city bikes down along the water in Bay Ridge. It's a long ride from wherever they're coming from, but they're already there. So all these things are really, it can't come soon enough. And I hope that safer bike lane options will follow soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, well, we really want to thank all of our committee members who shared their view and who stayed with us for this meeting, and also thank all of the members of the public who came out and had such thoughtful comments to add to tonight's discussion. And of course, we're always happy to see Leroy and our friends from DOT, knowing that, as I said, the safety of our community, the health and safety of our community is paramount to us. We appreciate that this initiative will help to improve the transportation options for our community. So thank you very much. Josephine, I think that we're good.
Yeah, right.
Because
That
it's
concludes.
informational for us.
Right, that concludes our agenda. It is informational. So Leroy, there was a lot of comments here tonight. Jane will present the committee and we'll include some of the feedback that was here to you, so you could share with the team. And that's all.
Yes.
That's all we have on the agenda tonight.
All right. Thank you for allowing us to be here, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you all. Good night.
Stay safe.